Hello and welcome. Nice to see you back again in here. Today we're taking a look at how do we use GitHub Actions to prepare our Rust console application to be published to Homebrew so that other users can actually use it, right? And as always, good afternoon. Alright, in the previous episode we'd taken a look at graphust's logic. Today, however, we're focusing solely on GitHub Actions. So what we're trying to achieve today is two things. First, we want the basic CI, so our tests are run on every commit. The second is, we want the binary to be built in release mode, and we want it to be packed and actually prepared in GitHub Releases. So let's dive in. While discussing the basic CI, we can actually use GitHub itself to help us out. We go to Actions, and as you can see here we've got some workflows. If you don't have any, don't worry, we'll add one in a second. We create new workflow, and GitHub is smart enough to already mention to us that perhaps we want to use the Rust GitHub action. Let's click Configure. You'll notice two things. So first, we're actually creating a file in our repo. We create two folders, GitHub Workflows, and then we create a YAML file there. That YAML file contains two main things. One is really when it needs to be run or when it should be run. And this is, as you can see, on push to main branch and pull request to main branch. This is actually a good default, so we'll leave it here. The second important part is we have a job that is called build. It will run on Ubuntu, it just checks out the code, then we actually build it with cargo build, and then we just run the tests similarly with cargo test. Once again with verbose, just because it might be useful. And this very default setup is actually perfect for what we want to achieve, because we just wanted the tests to be run. What you can do is really start the commit, but I already did that, so we already have, as you can see, GitHub Workflows and Rust YAML, which looks exactly the same, because I just used the defaults. Now, based on that YAML file, we will be creating something very similar for the actual release. My release setup works on a separate release branch in the code. The whole idea is we will always merge from main to release whenever we want to create a new release. Next step is actually to specify the release version. Then we need a job called release, which will run on macOS latest. Then let's go step by step of what we're doing, right? So first we just check out the repository. Since macOS latest does not contain Rust, we have to install it. Then we run the build to actually have that binary, and we package it right away in here. What's important is to use build in release mode. This line actually contains a small bug, and we'll fix it in a moment. After we have that package, we actually have to upload it to GitHub so we can later use it. This is quite simple because we've got a ready-to-use action for that, so very simple operation. Since I'm using manual versioning, what we actually do next is update, or rather create a git tag with that release version. Next we create a GitHub release. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let's take a look. Looking at your project homepage, on the right side you've got actually releases. Those two files, source code in zip and also in tar, those are done automatically with the release. Alright, getting back to the code. We want to attach our binary, so we need a separate step to do that. And that attaching operation actually gives us the packaged version of the binary in here in release. So this is an important step for us. At the very end, there's a helpful step. This is just printing the SHA checksum. It's gonna be later needed with Homebrew. So as you can see, my GitHub releases are done by GitHub Actions actor. And for it to work, there's actually one more step we have to do. So this is going into settings, then finding the code and automation section, and then there's actions. And in general setting for those actions, we have at the very bottom actually workflow permissions. So you have to grant the right permission to our workflow so it actually can operate on your repo. Cool. So you understand the steps that were needed, and you understand that we have to use a cargo build in release mode. Now I'm gonna show you the easier way. Yeah, you could have started with that, I know, but I wanted to show you the manual steps that you need to take in order for this to work. But actually, what we can use is a little bit different. Now, what really changed? Nothing in here. We still need to check out the repository. We still need to install Rust. We still need to build in release. And we still need to package our binary. And as I mentioned, there was a mistake in the previous version, so I packed by a mistake the whole folder structure where I wanted to use only the binary. So now you just go in with cd, then you pack the things up, and then you just go out. That's the whole difference. But the biggest difference is actually in here. So instead of 4 steps, we actually have only 1. This step actually does 4 things. It uploads the artifact, it creates a new git tag, it creates a new release, and it also attaches the artifact to our new release. All of that in those 5 lines. Still in this setup we're using manual versioning, just mentioning that out. Alright, let's check it out in action. Yeah, GitHub Actions, let's check it out in action. Yeah, I know, I know. So here is the overview of the basic CI that I mentioned. It has only 1 step, which is called build, and within that, as you can see, we've got the checkout, the build itself, which is, once again, build verbose, and then probably the most important step, which is cargo test, once again verbose. Yep, all 20 tests are fine, so we're good. Now getting back to that more interesting action, as you can see, there were quite some trial and error in here, but the latest version once again has a single step called release, and what it does is it checks out the repository, it installs Rust, it builds the package, then goes into target, release, and then packages the binary itself. Then with that single action we create the release, attach the binary, and do all the good stuff. At the very end we print out the SHA checksum. Once again, gonna be important in the next episode. And thanks to that we've got a release that contains our packaged binary. Great! And that's all for today, so thank you very much for paying attention, thank you for being here, and I hope that's useful. And as always, we can do better as a pack. Bye! Oh, there's a plane coming. Alright, cool. We'll wait a second. Admittedly, I could probably just close the window. Jesus. Ah.